Hi, this is Rebecca Sackett. I previously had done 2 different videos on doing the signature to a document from PowerApps using Flow. There's been changes to Flow, so although my existing flows are still working, the way that I had been doing it is no longer working. So I had to do a little research and figure out an alternative route. It's actually probably even better than the way I was doing it before. So if you want to take time to watch a video that Shane did, that's kind of where I got the basics of this from. He did one that's called PowerApps Pin Input to SharePoint. He posted it in October, so that'll help you kind of find it. I would definitely suggest watching it. He goes into a lot more detail than I'm going to go into the what's and whys of this, but so just to give you kind of a backstory, what I'm going to use this for, we have an app, which is really like, I don't know, 9 or 10 apps and multiple SharePoint lists that actually controls the QC quality control for our equipment. So it goes through different checkpoints and it gets checked at different points by different departments, and they each kind of do their own little questions that they go through. So what we had wanted to add now is a final document at the end. So not only do they want all the questions with the response put into a document, but they also want a department manager to sign off on it and that signature to be on the document that they can then place in the job folder. So the way it kind of works is that they have this that they kind of go through and they fill out in each department. This would be like fabs, and they go through and answer all these questions and go through and, you know, fill all this in. It's going to store the person's name and the date that they do it, and some of this stuff is not just yes and no, some of it's actual questions, but they fill in all this information and go through. So when they are done, this information is stored on one SharePoint list. This one would be the fabrication one. When the item gets to final QC, I have a flow run that looks to see where all it went, because not always does it go to everything. It might have been painted, some might not. And so it's just going to put this information here. So it's going to store the serial number, the job number, and then I put in what kind of description. Is it the electrical one? Is it fabrication? Give it an automatic signature as the status. And I pull in this ID because this is going to be like the customer name, all that information. And then this right here, this list details, we're going to put that in PowerApps whenever the item is signed. These I need because of the flow later. It's a lot easier to be able to use that get item, and if you have this ID, you can use that instead of items. It's going to make the flow run faster, it makes it more efficient, easier steps, cleaner, all around good. A lot of times I just use these titles, but because I will have duplicate lines, see these have the same serial number, but one's for electrical, one's for fabrication. This right here is going to be unique. And then this is going to be what I'm going to name the signature. So the flow is going to run and it's just going to save the signature as this ID number for this one line item. And then it could either be the same flow or a separate flow. It's then going to fetch it, that signature, and then put it into the document. So I haven't decided if I'm going to do it on 1 or 2 yet. I think I'm going to do it as 2 separate ones. So this is just going to be a phone app that's going to be used by QC. So he has a guy come from Fab and he's like, I've got units for you to sign, or electrical, whatever it may be. And he's going to go through and he's going to see these items here. These are going to be ones off of this list. And it's filtering for anything that is electrical and has a status of signature on this one. The other one would be Fab. This one already did, so we'll go ahead and do this one. So just to kind of break it down, when you first come here, it's going to reset the input, show select true, show sign false, and then show loading false. So I think I already did the same on this. Yes. And then the next thing is going to be whenever they select this item in the gallery, which is the final docs gallery, I want it to set the serial number and then set this item ID, because that's what I'm going to give the signature's name to, and then show the select false. So let me see, I'm just going to do some copy and paste. I'm big on copy and paste. Normally I copy the screen and then modify it, But to be able to go through and make sure I'm not missing anything, I'm going to do copy and paste right now so that you can see. Okay, well, I already have that too. So we're good. So then we're going to do, when they select, it's going to, so this is just a view form. It's just kind of showing them what was put in here. Some of these are blank because I just added them, so they don't have an answer yet. It shows who did it, what date. Sometimes there's a second time that it gets signed off on. That's what the extra space is. It may hide that if it's empty. And so they go through and fill this out. So then what I want to do is have, whenever they click the sign box, it's going to pop up the stuff that I want to, the signature part, the input. So let me see what all I had said on that. Make sure I'm not missing anything. All right, so we're gonna put this, let's see, I don't think I have anything on here right now. No, I don't. Okay, so let's put this here and we'll talk about it. So this is, I'm gonna change this to electrical. This is setting the ID of this item, which is what I was talking about. That's this column here, the list details. So I need that out of here. Val electrical ID is what it's going to be. It may store it as a number, but if I'm not sure and I know for a fact I have to have it as a number, which I do for this ID, a lot of times I'll put it inside this value just to be sure that it's in the right format for me. Because otherwise I'll have to convert it over in Flow, and I don't have to do that. Okay, then we're going to reset the pin input, which we haven't put here, and then set the pin input. I'm going to explain what this is in a second. So we're going to change these two. So let's go ahead and do the pop-up part that's going to do. So I'm going to do, I'm going to actually copy and paste that, and then we'll go over it. Okay, let's copy this, and then we're going to split it out into some detail and rename everything. Okay, so the visible of this group here is already going to be set as that show sign, which that's what I want. So we're going to go ahead and split out this group. I'm going to rename stuff so that I'm making sure what it is. This is my shade box. This is just a box that has a fill of white, and then I set it with a lower, what do you call it, transparency. This is just a white box that's behind it. I try to go through and rename stuff as I'm doing it. But one of the things I do at the end of the app is go through one last time and double check if I have any of the naming right, because it also helps me catch if I didn't do something right. It's kind of my last little check that I do. Okay, we're going to name this one electrical sign. This just says please sign below. Change that name. There's nothing special with it. And these will definitely change. This one is just a cancel button, which is just going to say show sign false. It's just going to hide this information. So there's nothing special really to do with it. This one though is the submit button, so it is going to have several changes on it. But we'll do it after we click on it. Alright, so let's change what's on this button first. We're going to reset this pin input, but we're going to reset the electrical one because that's the screen we're on. It's just going to clear that out where it's starting fresh. This right here is going to be for validation. You actually could do, I guess, update context instead of set, but I'm not going to change it. So it's going to set the variable electrical sign to what the input is right now on that pin input after I've just reset it. So basically it's setting this variable as a blank pin input. So let's go ahead and click that. This is cleaned. Let's go ahead and test it. I'm going to do a little swiggle and then hit cancel and then hit this again, and it is empty, so that's good. This display mode is going to be set off of that variable that we did. That's the input. So we're going to look at this. So if variable electrical sign equals the pin input of electrical sign, then make it disabled. So basically, this variable is set blank from when we click that sign button. If this is still showing exactly the same, which means still blank, disable this button. Otherwise, make it editable, which will allow them to click it. A lot of people do show and hide. I prefer, I used to, but I prefer disabling because you still see it, you just know you can't click it. And then we're going to change the on select. So the on select is going to show this loading so that you can kind of see the spinning, and it's going to hide this sign box for us. And then this flow that I used on Fab, which I'm going to show you how to build in a second, is going to run. This is the same as, it can be the exact same flow. I don't have to do two separate ones because of the fact that they have their own columns. So I really didn't have to split it out. So it's going to run this, it's going to name it, that variable for that final docs, which is what I want my image, the signature image, to be named as. And then this right here is what we're pushing to flow. Let me make sure I get the whole thing. So that's the run. The rest of this is going to take that pin input, and it's going to use JSON to get it into the right format we need for flow. So you can split this out, you can do it like this, but what it's basically doing is cutting off the first 24 numbers and the last 24 because you don't need those, and it's putting all this into the proper format. Let's see, so this says electrical, that's fine. And then what I need here is I'm going to patch this final docs. I'm going to update that status to signed so that it'll come off this list. This, I need to make sure it's electrical. It's going to put that list details here. Sorry, my building's loud. And then it's also going to update, this is not really related to what we're doing, but it's going to update this column for him that shows he's got it signed. So electrical to signed, and then it's going to refresh the data, that hide our loading, and then show select true so that it makes them have to click again. So we need to add the loading part, and then we're going to rename that group, and then we're going to do the flow, and it's actually really simple. I already have it built, but it's so easy that we'll just do it again real quick and I'll show you. What did I say? Oh, I have to add that loading. Let me just copy this. A lot of times what I do, I use a template and I'll have this loading saved here. And it's already grouped, it's already how I want it, everything. So I just take it and I paste it in. Only thing is getting it where you can drag it. There it goes. Okay. So I'm going to rename it to show loading. Make sure it's on top of everything else. This needs to be on top of everything else, and then this loading needs to be on top of it. Change this visible property to show loading. Alright, let's go do the flow real quick. So this is really all it is for the flow that just only creates a signature. So it's just PowerApps trigger and it creates a signature. So I'm going to do a new one real quick so I can show you how super simple it is. Create, click whatever. I never do that kind of stuff. I just start here. Alright, so PowerApps will be our trigger. And then we're just going to create a file. Depending on what you're doing, you could do the OneDrive. It really works the same. It's just more the permissions. So this one, I'm not real sure who's all going to end up using this. I know of at least a couple people, not me. So I need it to go to SharePoint so that they can save this data here. They're not going to be able to save it in my OneDrive. So it's gonna, oh, I'm sorry, I got to create an item. Let's try that again. Create a file. Okay, so it's going to be on in that folder, that signature folder. There. All right, this I'm going to ask in PowerApps, and this I'm going to ask in PowerApps. I want to rename this first. It's just my thing. I was having a heck of a time. If I try to change it right now when I still have stuff missing, it is not going to let me rename this. So I was crying about it on Twitter the other day, and one of my PowerApp contacts over there gave me a tip I didn't think of. It's so simple. So you just basically put some fake data there, and then it'll let you rename this. So this is going to be create signature. All right, so this file name we are going to ask in PowerApps, which is going to be here. All right. So that is going to be this part we did right here. This text, my variable from the final docs, which is what I want. That's a unique ID. And then I had to add in quotes, I did an and then in quotes .jpeg, and that's going to give me my file name. And then this part here, oh, that's not already in. This part here, we're also going to ask in PowerApps, but then we're going to have to do a little change to it. So just do see more and click this again. So it's got this file content, and then we're going to delete it and go here and do this base64 to binary, open, dynamic content, if I can talk, click this, and then hit OK. This is it. This is going to create the signature file. So let's go over here and test it real quick. I already did a quick little signature, and we're on 19F5421. All right. So this shows signed. This ID number is 29. So let's go make sure we have a signature there. And it's there. Make sure you still click on it though. And there it is. It's in good format for us where we can see it. So, you know, if it was actually a name. All right, so the second half is going to be for the document. I'm already kind of getting on my time here, so I'm probably going to do this in a separate video. But I will say that we could do the document from here and make this part of the flow, or we could do it as a separate one that is triggered by this status being changed to signed. So either way will work. I haven't decided yet which way I'm going to go, but I will decide here shortly and do the other half of the video. So I hope this helps, and like I said, if you need a little more detail, be sure to check out Shane's video because he goes into a little more detail on this information, but this is the basics of it. So I hope this helps someone out. All right, thanks. Bye.